one can't help but be intrigued when you discover, oh, there's a lost episode or a lost song of a band or artist or what have you, and this sort of thing. So such is the case with Shada, not to be confused with Tada. But this was an episode rather, several episodes, but I mean, an adventure, if you will, of the Doctor, the Fourth Doctor, that was lost because they couldn't finish it. I forget all the details. I'm sure someone in the comments, who, could fill us in on that. But anyway, they shot quite a bit, but not enough to finish the episode. Well, actually, there's quite a bit that needed to be finished. So, but watching it and seeing what the film segments were and the animated segments to recreate it now, you certainly see how, like all shows are done, that certain segments from the different points of the plot are shot all at once, depending on what sets and locations they're using, and that's how it works out. But anyway, so this was one that it had been around, and then there was a version of it where they just had Tom Baker come in and narrate the elements of it that weren't finished. And it's kind of this irritating thing, is this gap here for Doctor, so that even the Fourth Doctor, even Tom Baker's run, has a missing episode. Like the previous Doctors had this, certainly Troughton and Hartnell, which is absolutely disgraceful. They're getting a whole lot. It's actually well under 100 episodes missing now, where it used to be quite a bit more than that. And then, of course, they do the best they can to restore them with animation and whatnot today, because true hardcore fans kept audio recordings of the shows, so you had at least that. So it was possible to restore them to some extent. So, but with Tom Baker's series, this was just a show that got shot down, and it was the last episode of his penultimate season, if you will, before the final one comes along, where they changed everything. And so it's just kind of a bit of an irritating idea that there was one more and you didn't get it. So here it is in this form. The animation for a lot of these, I'm grateful that they did them. It's a good way to get a chance to see Doctor Who episodes you didn't get to see. But in a lot of ways, the animation doesn't really come together, and it's what they produce with what they have to work with. Now, granted, I'm much, because I'm older, I have much fondness for 2D animation, although this isn't quite that, but it looks like it. But it's it's rather stiff and being moved around and stuff like that. In this aspect, especially since they didn't necessarily, and it didn't really, the format that I have is not done in the chapters or anything like that. It's just all at once. They probably could have shortened segments, whereas some of the other Doctor Who episodes, where it's obvious that the visuals were meant to be expressed through body language and whatever scenery is in the shot, and it just seems to come to a dead stop for too long of a moment in some of that. And there's some of that here as well. The backgrounds and stuff are excellent. All that K9 looks fantastic. The ships and everything, it all looks really good. But the people themselves, but it is what it is. And there's certain elements that did work out, where they're showing you what the book from Gallifrey, and it's not just an ordinary book, and the guy's reading it, and you see the clock in the background indicating that time has changed and all that. So there's cool elements to it. But basically, the plot, of course, is yet again another rogue Time Lord we come in contact with, but Shada being the name of an asteroid or planetoid, if you will, place that the Time Lords used to set up a prison for their most dangerous criminals, one of which was one of their own named Sally Avon, and this other space criminal is looking for him because he wants to utilize this Time Lord's powers. Now, we run into other Time Lords that do appear to have certain powers that the Doctor himself doesn't have, or at least is certainly not at the stage where he could become capable of it. We've seen Time Lords who can project themselves and this sort of stuff and have more mastery over their mental powers. The Doctor has demonstrated his mental powers. It just comes across as a rather advanced form of hypnosis. The Master, of course, was far better at this than he was. But it's just these certain talents that the Time Lords have. They're telepathic to each other, not necessarily to others all the time, although now, you know, apparently the Doctor can mind meld like Spock and watch people's memories, but not her own, you know, whatever. So it is interesting. I think that keeps into the running that the Doctor is this average Time Lord guy who has special talents, but he was not, a Dr. God. He was not Superman. He was not, you know, they didn't look at him as all that special. It's some of them come to learn that he's a really clever guy and this sort of thing. But that's not how he was seen by Time Lord Society and all that. And that, I think, is a much better grounding of the character than this, you know, he's, again, Dr. God, not Doctor Who. And I'm interested in Doctor Who, not Dr. God. So we'll leave that to God. So here we meet this character. Of course, the Doctor has this friend that he knows is a Time Lord, but he's like a retired Time Lord. He's living out his days on Earth, posing as a professor at Cambridge, and he's Professor Chronotis or Chronotis, you know, but obviously chronology is in there because he's a Time Lord, so Chronotis is there. But of course, that's just an alias. He is Salyaven. The Doctor and Romana do not know this. In fact, they do not understand completely this story of this secret history of the Time Lords. Imagine that. And so, but this guy has escaped from that prison and is retired. He has literally retired. He's not this criminal anymore. And seems to be somewhat ashamed of his past and all that. There are some indications here where Salyaven, or Professor Chronotis, dies, and yet through an anomaly of time within his own TARDIS, which is masquerading as his, his residence and office, I guess, at the Cambridge, is able to restore him. Now, it's thrown in as if this is some sort of time paradox, where he didn't die, but he did. And it is an interesting thing to refer to if you wanted to, how do you explain other alternate doctors and this sort of thing? And, well, here it is. It might be, but I think it'll be largely forgotten. So this is a Douglas Adams story. I think his Pirate Planet was better, but this one does have a lot of flavor of Adams in it and weird things. So the criminal is using this sphere that just sucks out the mental power of people. So all their thoughts and abilities are all stuck inside there. And the people are just left kind of like zombies fluttering about. And he has this rather flamboyant outfit that he just walks around. And at one point he encounters this guy that's at the college, and he's not even looking at him. It's a funny scene. It's weird and all that, but he just says, "You." You. It's something, hey, he's an alien. He doesn't understand the proper means by which to communicate with people. And the guy turns around, "Well, you mean me?" And it's funny to see. But the guy that he's talking to is someone who has apparently met the Doctor several times. It refers to he's met the fourth Doctor, so of course, look, this indicates that Big Finish, and maybe they have already, could go into stories of the Doctor having crossed paths with Cambridge and with Professor Chronotis, which is insinuated as well as they go. But it also indicates that one of his previous incarnations had also visited here, is tossed in. But so everybody that gets touched by the sphere, they're their thoughts and mentality, or the essence of their soul, I guess, gets sucked into it. Except when it does to the doctor. The doctor is the doctor, so he's able to outfox it and project a copy of his mind. So it leaves him alone. You would think so, but I guess, human beings can't do that. So he's fine. Well, of course, this becomes the means by which the doctor achieves victory in the end. The ending, it just kind of wraps up, and it's not all that great. But, you get some essence and teases of an established Time Lord lore, a backstory and whatnot. Is it really? Well, who knows? They just sort of lay it out there and do what you will. Of course, these days they just completely ignore it to their detriment, but nevertheless, there it is. The book does, show the language of Gallifrey in it, and it's also one of these interesting aspects of simple items as a book is not a book to as it is perceived in humanity, and so there's items and stuff like that are very bizarre and surreal from Gallifrey that I wish there would be even more. There was hints at that from the Time War and stuff like that, but all we really got was the moment and stuff like that. But it's kind of difficult to craft stories with things like that are so abstract and bizarre as that. That's difficult to conceive of. So it's probably best left alone because I don't really have the skill with which to craft anything with it. So the rest of it is a chase here and there. Some students get involved in it. And the doctor saves the day because his memory is within the sphere. So once, what was his name? Scarrick or something like that. He achieves his goal. He wants to get Salyaven so he can steal his ability to project his mind into other people so that he can create a universal mind. So it would just be his controlling everybody. And then what? I don't know. But that was his ultimate goal. He has these henchmen, which are just these creatures that are created out of the ship. And I can imagine, like, the animation, of course, looks really good as it shows how this happens. Probably wouldn't have looked as good had it been filmed in their little bathtubs. So there's a lot of elements of that and stuff like that. And it plays out with the doctor having already set up his salvation in advance. It was also interesting. You get once again, there's a second TARDIS, which is portrayed as only a door, but whatever. And the idea being that this TARDIS is an even earlier model than what the Doctor has, because Time Lords apparently by this can retire elsewhere, but they're not allowed a TARDIS. But of course, along with the books that he wasn't supposed to have, Salyaven stole that and stole the TARDIS out of apparently a junk pile. Now, when he was supposed to have done this, I don't know. Did he take on the alias of Chronologist and they didn't realize he was Salyaven? That seems a little odd. But then again, it's possibly he's so old that no one remembers his original identity. But it doesn't really clear that up in it. But he survives, I guess, because he's the paradox, I guess, keeps him alive. And at the end, it just ends. The police officer shows up and wants to all see them downtown, try to figure out what's going on, because he witnesses the Doctor's TARDIS disappear in front of him. But it leaves it up there that, you could suggest that there were possibly adventures with the professor and the two students going forward. And could be a character that could be revisited because he's a Time Lord. Did he really reach the end of his regenerations? The Doctor suspects he did, but he doesn't really know that. It's a character that could have been revisited. But certainly through Big Finish with the Fourth Doctor, they could have other stories involving the two and that sort of thing. Anyway, there was another version of this that was done with Paul McGann and Lalla Ward where because the footage from Shada, that since it wasn't used, it happened to be quite fortunate somewhat for the Five Doctors, because at the last minute Tom Baker backed out. But today admits he wishes he hadn't done that, and boy do I wish he hadn't done it either. You know, a lot of the stuff that actually Peter Davison ended up doing in that story was written for him. So it would have been a bit different. And they had different plot ideas about what it was. And I think, and certainly in the outset, the Master was going to be the main villain. But anyway, so the footage came in handy for them to do their little, you know, time scoop scene with Tom Baker and Lalla Ward getting stuck from that footage. So it was new footage that you hadn't seen before. And he said, oh, look at that. And he said, at the time I thought, gee, they just shot that and stuck that in there. You know, I didn't know that there was this other show that never made it to broadcast. So that's what they did. But the Paul McGann written for the audio story is not that bad. It's actually pretty good, and I quite liked it. And I like Paul McGann's Doctor. I think he really deserves more attention on that. They should have done something about it, but oh well. But anyway, it just basically is like several incarnations later, he meets up with Romana, now as Lady President of Gallifrey, and says, hey, remember that when we disappeared for a while? What were we doing back then? And so he said, let's go back and figure that out. So they go back to 1979 and say, oh, this was going on. So I think it might be important that we stop that. Anyway, so there it is. Which one happened? Oh, well, you know, so they're divergent timelines already. So anyway, it's worth checking out, of course. Had it been fully realized, maybe it would have been a little different. A lot of times listening to Tom Baker's Big Finish stories, like, wow, man, he's still there, you know, and all that. Well, juxtaposed with his original footage, and then you could say, yeah, the years have taken there, and that's the way it goes. Still has a fantastic voice, but yeah, of course you can tell. And no different from the other characters and all that. But anyway, it's a fun Fourth Doctor adventure. But is it this lost masterpiece? No, it's a lost show that's been restored for the best of their ability, but not really a masterpiece. Not up to some of the greats of Doctor Who and all of that. But it's a good romp. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness. So many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.